Hope you had a wonderful time checking in with one another. It's great to have you all back. Welcome to Sunday Morning Zen this morning. And we really appreciate your support. It makes programs like Sunday Morning Zen and Commit to Sit possible. And appreciate it if, while it's on top of your mind, if you give from the bottom of your heart by just clicking on the donate link at zlmc.org and helping us continue to make these programs available. So this morning's talk is about the Ango that's starting up this year. We're starting up on September 12th, and it's going to be a wonderful time deepening our practice. Always a sincere honor to practice with all of you. Sangha is one of the triple jewels in Buddhism, and it's a place, it's a container where we're able to support one another in practice. And by practice, of course, we mean our lives, right? Because we all struggle, we all suffer from time to time, and sometimes our best intentions really aren't enough. In a lot of cases, it really truly takes a village to render the encouragement that we need to continue our practice. Being proactive is really the key to living a productive spiritual life. Sitting on our cushion, of course, is very important. And as a matter of fact, it's a behavioral hump that many don't even make it over. But it's not the full story, right? You can have a disciplined sitting regimen, but if you don't get up after you're done and engage with what is coming up in the world for you, if you don't practice and open to life's challenges, and sitting can be somewhat of a hollow victory. So the question comes up, what gets in the way? What gets in the way of practice growth? And I'm going to suggest that for many of us, what gets in the way is a rigidity born of habit. We all make very small decisions over time about how we define ourselves that seem innocuous enough at first, right? We dress in a way that shows our adventurousness or attempts to show our intelligence, our outlandishness in some cases. We craft a professional resume that we can use to show our accomplishments so we can frame ourselves to prospective employers. But then we keep adding. Initially, I think we have an ability to separate from this narrative. We can see it as a story rather than truth. We can realize it really isn't who we are. But over time, without ego hygiene, we can start to buy into this identity that we've created. And this is driven, I think, in part by the ways we comfort ourselves to hold this ego together that we've created. We establish habitual patterns that comfort us. How we eat, how we drink, how we entertain ourselves to pass the time. I say pass the time because it often feels like we need to be constantly occupied, entertained, if we're going to hold this narrative of self together. And if we ever experience an incongruency between our lived experience and the self, the story that we've woven, we feel a lot of discomfort. It's a discomfort that's kind of springs forth from a perceived loss of control. A short time where we're kind of forced into this place of not knowing, not practicing willingly, right? As we all know, not knowing can be unsettling, especially when we've bought in to the narrative and daily habits that we've woven together to reinforce ourselves. So I'm not sure I don't have to tell you that the whole universe really resides in that gap of not knowing, that place. But we're often led to believe that the finite, small sense of knowing that drives our journey is much greater. We think that we have apprehended or we know what's going on. And that the ego tells us that we have and know so much. That uncertainty and not knowing is really just a very small part of existence. Of course, we know the opposite is true. actual knowing is what's very small. So from time to time, we need to challenge this narrative. But it's not always very easy to do because it takes a lot of courage, it takes some bravery. In the case of Sangha, really, it takes a village. We have to embrace that sense of not knowing, that vulnerability that opens up when we drop from that knowing attitude. And our Zen tradition has some ways of doing this. Of course, meditation is one of them, right? We spoke about it before, and we have to give it prompts. It's strong medicine. You can, by sitting meditation, start to distance yourself from that narrative, and then realize that there's someone who's observing the narrative. Someone else shows up. And in that recognition, something amazing bursts forth. And that's kind of the start of our spiritual journey. And the hold of the discursive mind starts to loosen. The glue of the narrative of the small self starts to give way. And truly, meditation is a very powerful medicine. And we're all on a high maintenance dose of that medicine. We also take that meditation and we bring it into another powerful tool we have, kind of break down that narrative that we call sesshin. And people often wonder what sesshin is all about. Of course, it's about a lot of sitting meditation, right? We sit 6 hours per day, sometimes more every day, for many days in a row. There's no doubt it's a very life-transforming experience. We take that time to renew our intention, a time where a lot of our doubts are quelled, a time where the nagging inner critic tends to loosen her grip during that time. And meditation is a big part of the power of sesshin, but there's another principle at play here. And that is that during sesshin, we shed our normal everyday schedule. Right? We willingly and purposely create that gap we talked about before because we change our habits. We alter the course of the ego stream at that time. And this shattering of our daily routine goes a long way towards giving us the insight required to reorder our priorities. Matter of fact, they're actually reordered for us during retreat, right? There's a section on the wall. We'll walk through that. And in this way, when we practice this way, sesshin can create a kind of lasting halo effect when we're done. These ripples are felt well after the retreat is over, as we get an opportunity to catch a glimpse of what it's like when these rigid habits kind of fade away, and our narrative of self drops away. And we can abide directly in what's coming up for us. Sesshin is also a very strong medicine. But we actually have another tool in our arsenal to advance ourselves towards living as an inspired life. And I think the last time we did one of these here was probably 11 years ago or so. Yeah. We call this tool Ango. And we combine the power of that daily meditation regimen that we just talked about. We actually, a lot of times, double down on it. And we bookend this period with 2 sesshins, and it goes on over a 3-month period. It's really an exciting and transformative experience. In the traditional monastic setting, Ango will be held a couple of times a year, twice a year. First from spring into summer, and the second period from fall into winter. The name Ango actually translates as dwelling in peace, or peaceful dwelling. There's been a trend of late towards Zen centers holding Ango once per year, because there's a lot of power in the contrast involved. Your normal habitual patterns kind of stand in contrast to our ordered lives and our renewed commitments during Ango. And you'll set the cadence of your practice during Ango by making commitments that steer your life away from your everyday habits and routine. And that's what we're here to talk to you a little bit today. Is this upcoming Ango we're doing at ZLMC starting on the 12th and we'll go through December 5th. Roshi.
Morning, everyone. I want to welcome anyone here that's new. Antoine, you just walked in. Have you been here to the Zen Center before? Welcome, Antoine. And I see Annie. I know you're not new, but I haven't seen you for a while, Annie, so it's lovely to see you. Where are you in the world? You have to unmute, Annie.
Sorry, I'm in Cornwall, England, Roshi, same place.
In England?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. And I see some names I don't recognize there, but so welcome if you're new to the Zen Center. What we're talking about this morning is a 3-month training period that we'll be doing this fall, which we invite you to participate in. And it's a way of intensifying our practice together. So I think the question that's appropriate here at this point is, how do we evoke the sacred in our secular lives? What does that look like when you evoke the sacred? I just want to open that as a point of discussion to start what I want to say. In your life, what is when you have the experience of the sacred? People often say they have it when they're nature. You're in a whole ecosystem that's pristine and you feel the total involvement and you're part of that and that feels sacred. What is it? I want you to think about what evokes the sacred in your, so we can think of the sacred, it's easy to have a sense of sacred. If you go into a big cathedral like Chartres Cathedral in France, it's sacred. It's obviously a sacred place. But it's partly also because of the architecture, right? You go into a big cathedral and you feel that sense of the sacred space there. And I think often the sacred space in a Zen center would be defined by how you go into the space and how you go out. So the space has a demarcation where you go from the mundane to the sacred. And you usually have a central altar in a sacred space, which acts as kind of like the axis mundi, right? It's sort of the central reference point for the community. It could be Christ, it could be Buddha, it could be Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. The thing here at our Zen Center, we are secular in our style, and I'm in the Buddha Hall right now, and we sit in here, we do services in here, but it's also a multi-purpose room. So if we were to treat this as a traditional Zendo, we would start to feel somewhat constrained when we do other things here that aren't meditation or a service, because we do classes here, we have meetings here, there's dance classes in here, hula classes. So if we try to treat this as a traditional sacred space in the way that it would be done in a Zen center, it seems to me we would feel constrained in it when we were doing other activities that were more secular in nature. So again, here's the koan. How do you evoke the sacred in your everyday secular life? And what does that look like? And I'm going to stop talking and let you educate me. Tell me how that works for you. Anybody?
Well, Roshi.
Okay, I'll jump.
Okay, go on, Annie. Oh, wait.
Okay, I don't have an answer. I think it's something that's, thank you. I think it's something that requires a real going into the inside, into my heart, into what I'm feeling, and meditating helps a lot. Prayer helps a lot for me. It can be in nature. It can be working with a group of people who have the common intention of lessening suffering in the world, whether it's, going on a retreat or doing some kind of homeless work, and being conscious all the time of the sacredness of life is hard. in a day-to-day life. I think it does help, though. Thank you.
Okay, Annie, thank you. Annie is, just so you all know, Annie is a member of the Peacemaker community and does a lot of social action work. And in the Peacemaker community, they often do plunges at Auschwitz, where they go to Auschwitz and they sit and they chant, they do services and they chant the names of people that have died in Auschwitz, and they tell stories from their respective countries and religious. It's an interfaith practice in the Peacemaker community. So all religions are involved in that practice of bearing witness to Auschwitz or bearing witness in an Indian reservation.
So that's exactly one of the points I wanted to make, Roshi, that, and Annie used the word sacredness of human life. And for me, that is paramount. And last week, maybe, was it, recently, you asked about the spiritual as well. And I think the interconnection of the sacred and the spiritual is critical for me. When I think about the sacredness of human life, and I ask myself, why is it that I'm so concerned with the welfare of the homeless people that I encounter regularly down here? I realize that it's also a part of my spiritual nature to want to bring in my heart and their hearts together, mine and theirs. So it's hard for me to separate the spiritual and the sacred, but the sacred is very real to me as the oneness of human life.
With the sacred, they really can't be pulled apart. They seem to come together, come in the same package, so to speak. And we spoke a bit about spirituality. What was that, last week? Whenever I gave my talk, a couple weeks ago. It's a good question. What's the spiritual too? And seems to me as when we're talking about, some people talk about religion and spirituality in the same way. Religion can have some baggage. So we often use the word spiritual in place of religion to talk about, I think, pretty much the same thing, but not necessarily in an organized way, but in an experiential way. What is spiritual is, seems to me, seeing the world not as objects that are separate, but seeing the world as one in a non-material way. And that's, I think, what we mean by spirit, or the Holy Ghost, you might say, in Christianity.
Spiritual, what is it? Spiritu mundi? Is that?
Oh, the axis mundi is sort of
Yeah.
a way of talking about something that's in a temple that is kind of the marking, the center of the universe from which everything is oriented. It'd be like the center of a mandala or the altar. And it seems that sacred spaces usually need something that marks that. So the reason I'm bringing this up is I think it has something to say about what we're trying to do with this, this training. It seems to me that what we could aspire to do is to bring, evoke the sacred in our secular lives, evoke the sacred in your home. And what would that look like for you? It'll look different to every person, but what, if you ask yourself the question, how could I evoke the sacred in my condo, in my apartment, in my house? What would that look like? What would I need to do to actually have that experience of the sacred in my everyday home? In other words, almost treating my home as a temple. And I have the same question for the Zen Center as a place here in Oak Park. What would it look like if we were to really evoke the sacred here in how we practice together and how we do it? And I think that is raising the bar considerably in some way for all of us to think about what that would look like. And I think it means a kind of, when we say raising the bar in terms of your commitment to your practice, I think the sacred has something to do with our total involvement with the present, a complete commitment to the present with no escape clause written into the contract. We're willing to be fully on the spot with no escape clause, without any insurance policy or and it seems to me it's that total involvement that then evokes the sacred. And the way it's done traditionally in the Zen practice in Japan, which is not our practice here, but just so you get a sense of this, in a monastery, you're kept busy from morning to night. You are working if you're not sitting on the cushion, you're cutting vegetables in the kitchen, or you're sweeping the grounds, or you're taking out the trash, or you're busy, and you're kept busy from morning to night. And it's a kind of, you might say, oh, that's terrible, that's just too overbearing. But what happens in that kind of practice is that you're so involved in what you're doing that you don't have a lot of time for your personal agenda. You just don't have much time to entertain yourself that way. And so prajna, or wisdom, or kind of a cutting wisdom and direct experience, come out of that kind of commitment to that kind of practice. And while I'm not suggesting we do that here at the Zen Center, I am inviting the possibility that we could, in Ango, we could use a training period to really tighten up our practice, to everyone make a commitment to raise the bar of what practice is to you, so that you're evoking the sacred. And we would be doing more services here. We'll be doing fusatsu ceremonies once a month, which is a ceremony that we haven't done here for a long time, but it's a way of renewing the precepts. And it's usually done around the full moon. I think we're going to do like on the 20th of each month. It's a ceremony that we do together in which we renew our commitment to the precepts. And whether you've taken the precepts formally or not, it doesn't matter. Everyone can renew their commitment to living with personal integrity in your life, to right speech and right effort, right conduct. So that's my sense of the training period. Is it's an opportunity for us to kind of, and maybe another way to ask this question about evoking the sacred is, what would you need to reset? What reference point would you reset? If the reference point in a temple is the axis mundi, it's the Buddha, which represents the oneness of reality with no division, no separation, no duality. If that's the reset point in a temple, what's the reset point for you? And think of this way. Our normal reference points are usually the voice in our head. That's what we seem to trust. It's not a very reliable guide, but we all do it. We all know what it's like. And what we're talking about in a spiritual practice, or evoking the sacred, is we're resetting that reference point. That's no longer the reference point, and we know it's not. And we're committing to resetting with another reference point. And in a temple, the reference point would be the Buddha. In our temple right now, the reference point is Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. And Shikan's going to do a study group with Ango participants on the Lotus Sutra, which is all about the Bodhisattva path. So the Ango is a big deal for us. It takes a lot of energy to do it, and we're doing it because we want to kind of tighten up practice at the Zen Center. We want to give everyone an opportunity to deepen their commitment to this practice in whatever way that means to you. So it's not one size fits all. Everyone has a different life situation, and what raising the bar for you means to you may be different for somebody else. But I am inviting you to consider raising the bar, doing a reset. And then if you join the Ango, the way that would work is you would meet with Shikan, and you'll kind of, it's almost like making a contract. We have to really kind of be intentional about this in some way. And we can, so you meet with Michael and you discuss how you're going to, what the commitment you're going to make during this training period and what it is for you. And you write that down so that it's not vague. We have to somehow kind of hold our feet to the fire. We're all kind of tricky, you know, we can weasel out of things really easily. So we have to kind of, you know, make a promise and write it, put it on paper and sign it. So then we're committed, you know. that's how we measure commitment in our culture. You sign the contract. And there's no, on this contract, there is no escape clause. Just think of it like that, a contract without an escape clause. I mean, so it's a total commitment to your practice. You're really making, that involves a kind of trust, I think, trust in the Dharma. That it's something worth paying attention to, that is some kind of sanity that we don't see in our world all the time. We see a lot of insanity and a lot of chaos and disruption. So if we were to evoke that kind of sanity within this, you know, our world, which is often disheartening, what could that be like? Any questions, comments, Michael?
I mean, you know, so from a basic perspective, when we talk about Ango, we ask what's involved, because we don't want to be so nebulous that, you know, there's no direction at all. So we start from this idea. What's involved is that you attend the autumn and winter session. And before everybody, I know as I'm reading through the list, people are going to go, there's no way. But so just let me finish the list and we'll talk about how to work from there. So attend the winter, autumn.
Michael, get closer to the microphone, will you?
Better?
Oh, much. Thank you.
Oh, good. So attend that autumn and winter session, right? Optimally, the winter would be full-time in person. Optimally, both would be full-time in person. But at any rate, commit to lengthening your meditation practice significantly. So what significantly is something different for all of us. So, you know, but I would say if you're sitting 30 minutes a day, it's probably an hour a day. If you're sitting 45 minutes, it's probably an hour and a half. And you've seen, we've actually increased the amount of time we're sitting in commit to sit already in preparation for Ango. And as Roshi had mentioned, we're going to do a bi-weekly study session of the Lotus Sutra. We're going to meet together on Tuesday evenings, every other Tuesday evening, starting on the 28th of September. We'll have a meal together, and then we'll go through. We're actually going to systematically work through the parables in the Lotus Sutra during that time. We'll also, during this period, have Buddhist services weekly. And optimally, you'd all show up and learn the different service positions involved, and come celebrate with us, service with us on a weekly basis. There would be, of course, be time if you're studying, or even if you're not studying, but participating in Ango with Roshi or Sensei, for the ability to have one-on-one interviews to continue your training during sessions. And there'll be additional events as Ango unfolds. We had mentioned Fusatsu ceremonies. They're already scheduled and up on the website. So we haven't gone through it before, but if you go to the website now, you'll see that right below the primary banner, there's a little logo that says 2021 Ango on it, and has a little mandala. If you're here in the room, it looks like that. So you'll see that on the website when you tune in at home, when you get home. But if you're tuning in from afar, you can see it on the website. All the dates, all the important dates for the Ango are mentioned there, as well as a form to sign up. So here's what we want to make clear. Although we have a starting point of suggested reference of how to work with your practice during this period, and we'll actually do more once Ango begins about making personal commitments. We want to stress though that even if you say, hey, I'd like to participate, but I need some accommodation, I can't make some of these dates or times, that you sign up anyway, and let's meet and talk about what deepening your practice and what commitment makes sense for you to be involved in Ango. And by the act of filling out that form, we'll carve some time out to talk, and then you'll make basically an agreement with yourself about how you're going to practice during this period. But it's a wonderful way to really come together as a Sangha. And there's a lot of memories that are created during this time, because I mean, just regularly, just by meeting and doing check-ins, I know on Commit to Sit, it's so meaningful for a lot of folks, and there's such a strong connection fostered during Ango. There's a lot of memories that are made that really lasts a lifetime, and the halo effect from this practice is big. It casts a big shadow over your life in a very positive way. So we'd love to have you take a look. Go online, take a look at the dates and the commitments that we've talked about, but then even more importantly, to search your heart and see if this is a practice you'd like to undertake. And if it is, we'll find a way. We'll find a way for everyone to participate near and far in the Ango.
So just to be clear, what Michael is saying is that you may want to do the Ango, but you can't do the fall retreat full time because you have to work. We will figure out a way to work with that. Sign up anyway, and then we'll make exceptions for you because you have to work. So a traditional Ango would be more monastic. It would generally be residential. Everyone would be in the same place for 3 months. We can't do that. It's not realistic. Many of you have jobs and other commitments in the world. So we have to do it in a secular way. Having said that, it will help to have more structure in terms of the schedule at the Zen Center and the Commit to Sit that you can, or ways that you can participate online. So we were thinking for a while that we would just do the Ango in person. It would only be for people that could come here, because there's a huge part of evoking a sacred space, which has to do with practicing together in a physical space, So part of that is showing up at the center. But so I'd like you to think of this in two ways. One is, if you live in the area here, close to the Zen Center, and you want to come to the Ango, part of your commitment is to come to the Zen Center. Even though we have this, all the issues with the pandemic, we've still opened up, but now we're wearing masks when we're indoors, unless someone is speaking, like I'm speaking right now. And then if I'm not speaking, I'll put my mask back on. But we can still show up, get vaccinated, wear a mask, and we can still practice together. And I think that's part of the Ango, is showing up. We have two kinds of positions in the Zen, if we treat the Zen Center as a temple, which we will do for 3 months, we will set up, we will have 7 different altars here that the head trainee, who is Shikan, will go around to and do a service every morning. 7. There's the Buddha Hall altar, there's the Founder's altar, there's the Doksan altar, there's a bathroom altar, there's a kitchen altar, there's a protector's altar. The whole catastrophe of living. We're not going to leave anything out of our sacred world. Everything's included. Yeah, the lube and the kitchen and everything in between. And so if you join the Ango, one way that we create structure and practice together is we would be doing services more often, and you would join those services. A lot of people don't like ritual, but ritual is part of evoking the sacred. It's embodying it completely with your voice and your body and your heart. So you would learn to have a service position, most likely if you're in the Ango and you're in the area. You would come and learn a service position, being someone that passes out the sutra books, or you hit the drum, or you learn how to use the bells. And then there's another kind of position, which is positions that are in the temple that aren't in the service. So for instance, traditionally, there are quite a few of them in large temples, but certainly one that we would have is called the Chiden. These are Japanese terms. I forget half of them, but I remember this one. There's the Chiden, which is the person that takes care of the altars. And so if your position is to be the Chiden, then that means you come to the center regularly and you clean the altars. You make sure that they're clean so that when we use them, they're ready to go. And that's just one example. So the other, and I don't want to scare you away, but there has to be a place for Samu work practice like in a sesshin. We wouldn't think of doing a spiritual retreat without doing physical labor. It's just part of our tradition. And it kind of gets you moving too. So think of, in this training period, having opportunities to do Samu collectively together, occasionally at the Zen Center, or think of doing Samu work practice in your home, or treating work that you do in your home with the same spirit that you would do with Samu. And that spirit is always being on the spot, just doing one thing at a time, a total involvement in what you're doing without any other reference points going on. And again, schedules and rituals are ways to create containers so that we can be in this kind of practice. It's a little harder when you're on your own. When you're in a monastery or a temple, you just follow the schedule and it kind of takes care of itself. So we're in a different kind of situation. We want to invite those of you that are from a distance, if you want to join this Ango, to participate. Obviously you won't be able to participate in the same way that people will that come to the temple in person, but we'll do the best we can. And I think we want to open this training to anyone that wants to deepen. You want to deepen your practice and your commitment and trust in the Dharma, in the Buddha Dharma. I'll just say one last thing, because I saw this beautiful movie last night. It's on Tricycle. I think it's called Mr. Hugh Builds a Temple. And it was just so, I watched this and I was crying at the end. It was so moving to me. These Chinese Buddhists, and it's some kind of Mahayana school. It didn't say which school it was. It doesn't matter. But this Chinese businessman in the Netherlands, and there's other Chinese Buddhists living in the Netherlands, wanted to build a temple. And they're very traditional Buddhists, and they're very devotional and good-hearted. Just their sincerity and their good-heartedness just shine through the whole movie. And they were so sincere and committed that wanted to build this temple. And for them, that means a certain, they had to have big Buddha statues. So they tried to make a partnership with a monastery in China that would make but you have to be aware that part of the interesting dialogue that takes place in this movie is between these secular Buddhists in the Netherlands trying to negotiate with the monks in a monastery in China to get these Buddha statues. And it turns out it doesn't work. They can't marry the divide between the monastics and the secular because they have different rules in each place. They finally find another partner and they get a statue anyway from another temple. But the whole movie is just, we're not like this in our culture, I think, but just see how Chinese Buddhists practice and the kind of devotion they have to Buddhism and the Buddha Dharma. It's very moving, and I highly recommend it because it just gives you another window into a way that Buddhism is practiced in Asian cultures, and now is being practiced in the West as well. So I think Shishin.
It's interesting, Roshi, that you bring that up. As you and Shikan have been talking, I've been thinking to myself about your comment about raising the bar, which I wholly endorse. And I'm thinking about our Sangha, Zen Life Meditation Center Sangha, and the fact that to raise the bar for 3 months probably or potentially creates a cultural shift, potentiates, I'd rather say, potentiates a cultural shift for the Sangha. And so I'm not asking the question, I'm just throwing this out there as something that maybe we all should think about. What is the next level that our Sangha will be as a result of this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I'm not sure we have to answer it. I think it's more important just to commit to the practice and then
I don't want
see
to
what
answer.
comes without any expectation.
It's not an answer. It's something that should just sit in us. I mean, not answerable. I
Yeah.
think it's complete not knowing. It just needs to sit with us.
The other thing I want to emphasize here, because this could sound really intimidating, 3 months of intensifying your practice. Oh my God, this sounds really like I'm going to have to be an ascetic. And I think it's important to get that what we mean by total involvement in practice is not that you increase your willpower to do it. It's a kind of effortless effort. You have discipline, and you have to put yourself in the container for that discipline. You kind of have to be in the environment that has discipline built into it. And then when you make that commitment, it's not a heavy-handed kind of effort that you're doing. It's actually a kind of touch and go. And so I think it's important to be clear that when we talk about raising the bar and intensifying our practice, we're not talking about burning out and getting all serious and not laughing anymore and being kind of glum and, all high and mighty about our practice. It's just the opposite. It's being more lighthearted and having more spaciousness, and seeing each other and really appreciating our lives more. So it's a kind of joy comes out of this kind of practice. And we have, it sounds funny, but we have this comes from the monastic Christian tradition where you're in the Ango and you're practicing all day. And when I did this at Zen Mountain Center, I did it in a traditional way. We have in the traditional schedule, we have 1 day off. It's called the Hosan. And we even chant it at the end of the period before, I think it's called Hosen or Hosan. And the Ino, we're all gathered in the Zendo and we'll do some chant. And then at the end, the Ino roar says, Hosan. And then someone hits a drum, boom. And now that's the signal that we get the next day off. And then we're back at it the day after that. So there's got to be some space for self-care. We're not talking about getting busier. We're actually talking about getting less busy. If you can believe that committing to your practice you could have more stillness in your life than you had before. I think that's possible, but it's a little counterintuitive. When we think of raising the bar, we think it sounds awful, or, we have resistance to having more discipline sounds not so great. So we have some resistance to that. But what I want to suggest to you that if you're willing to really make this commitment to a spiritual life and evoking the sacred in your world, I think you will find that you're actually much more spacious and lighthearted, and you'll find that there's a lot of laughter in the Sangha, even though we're working very hard. That's been my experience.
We're excited to keep doing this with you. And I think there's a lot of not knowing around exactly how we're going to do this in a hybrid way, but I'm confident that we can. And I'm very excited about the ability to come together as a Sangha and work more closely together on each other and on supporting each other's practice for these next few months. And so I would just say again, if you're looking at this and saying, I'd really like to participate, but I'm not quite sure how, that you just take the plunge and let's work through that. The sign up form is right online, and then we'll talk about what it means. And I think there's going to be a lot of fun around working out this balance between in person and online, and how we're going to support each other in the next few months. But we're here now. If there's any questions, we'd love to answer them for you about this period, although we might have covered a lot of that.
Yes, so when are the deadlines?
So Ango starts on September 12th. That's, and you asked the first question that I have, all of a sudden I just realized we never set a deadline for sign up, but I guess I would sign up sooner rather than later so that we have time to get with everybody and talk about your commitments. So I'll noodle on that and we'll set a deadline soon.
What will
Thank
be,
you.
I'll give myself a Monday deadline to set a deadline.
what is your thought about the ongoing Commit to Sit group?
Well, Commit to Sit will continue. It's part of the morning meditation, but to be certain, we're encouraging people who are involved in Commit to Sit to become involved in the Ango, and there might be some things that have to give way because the Sangha's entire focus is right now is going to be on this Ango. So
it seems most likely that people could be in Commit to Sit and not necessarily be in the Ango. And the Commit to Sit it's now an hour and a half. We might increase it more. We might have other sitting periods. Again, we're trying to be flexible about the schedule because we just don't know where we're going to be exactly with the pandemic come middle of September. But there will still be opportunities to do Commit to Sit whether you're in the Ango or not.
check-in dates may change or something, because I know, again, we have to see the totality of involvement and what days we're going to set for rest, and then I'll try to.
The thing that will change is the Saturday check-in will not happen. And I think it's partly because we just have to recognize that Shikan has limited resources and he's going to be working a lot harder during the Ango. And so he needs time to rest on Saturdays and be with his family. So that normal check-in that you do as part of the commit to sit will probably not happen during the Ango period, but the weekly sitting will happen.
And again, if you're participating in Ango, those Tuesday night Lotus Sutra get-togethers will be a good place to do check-in as well. And we're open and flexible. If we have a lot of people participating from afar, we may set another check-in just to support people who are in Ango as well.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to figuring out how I'm going to up my game. And I love the question that you asked Roshi about how do we evoke the sacred in our own space. And I just think about it also, how do I evoke the sacred just in my mind? So I really appreciate that question. I'm going to sit with that.
Well, I see a lot of gears turning online and in person. I know there's a lot to mull over, and we're here to support you. We're excited about this practice period. So if there are any more questions, I look forward to seeing those of you who sign up online. Take care of yourselves. Be safe.
Good to see everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Get vaccinated if you're not.
Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.